Ms. Brenner.
Well, just for anybody who didn't, we are going to be discussing the thing about the marijuana with the Liquor Control Board. It'll be at the end of the meeting, so I hope some people get to stay for it.
All right, next thing on our agenda is the consent agenda from the Finance and Administrative Services Committee. Mr. Crawford. If people want to move out to the back, please do that as quietly as possible. Why don't we take a 2-minute break?
Council Finance Administrative Services Committee meeting today met, and we considered the consent agenda, and it's items 1 through 10. The item 8 was not voted on for recommendation, but was agreed upon to send it forward to the council without a recommendation because we didn't quite have all the information that we wanted. So the rest of the items, 1 through 7 and 9 and 10, were approved with a unanimous recommendation of 3-0. A couple of notes on item 2. The title, everything was correct in the packet, but the title should read, Request Approval for the County Executive to Enter into an Interlocal Agreement for the Purchase of the Paint. And then on item 9, I will note that in the purple packet, there is a substitute version that was passed that simply adds a clause in the contract for proof of, for the contractor to provide proof of insurance. So on behalf of the committee, and again, all these were voted 3-0 for recommendation for approval. So on behalf of the committee, I will move items 1 through 7 and 9 and 10 for council approval.
Okay, we have those items in front of us, 1 through 7 and 9 and 10. Anybody want to pull any of those? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those pass unanimously. Item number 8.
Yeah, on item number 8 was a contract between the county and Monarch Media Incorporated for development of an online aquatic invasive species awareness course, website, and reporting system in the amount of $29,710. And for the sake of discussion and potentially a vote tonight, I will move approval of this item. I just wanted to say the committee hesitated on this because we had discussed the broader aquatic invasive species program last week in our surface water work session, and I think it was the sense on my part, certainly, and on the other council members' part, that we hadn't finalized what our portion of the increased costs for that program in 2014 would be. We had budgeted $70,000, but weren't certain what, since the cost of the program is going up in some areas rather significantly, what that would be. So, and we also didn't know if this $29,000 was part of that or if that was separate from that. So I see Gary's come up to answer some of those questions.
Yes, Gary Stoika, Whatcom County Public Works, here to answer the question.
Could you speak in the mic, please?
Oh, Gary Stoika, Whatcom County Public Works. Thanks. So, what questions would you like me to answer? The $29,710 is in the current budget that was adopted by the council in the flood control zone budget. Yes.
And is that part of the $70,000?
That is part of the $70,000. Yes.
Okay, and maybe I didn't understand the answer last week, but I thought we weren't definitive on what our portion of the additional budget that is being proposed for 2014 on the expenditure side for 2014 over 2013
Correct.
On our program.
The county has agreed to pay $70,000 of that. The city is still trying to come up with the total cost of the project. Part of the problem is that the way the city budgets for their staff is that they have to budget for the full utilization of staff, even if they only plan on using them part of the time. So they are working on giving us a number that's actually going to reflect what they're actually going to spend. Because last year they budgeted for a fairly large portion because of the way their budgeting process works. And now what we want to know, the county wants to know, is what's it actually going to cost, not what they need to do to budget for their staffing needs.
And we just don't know that yet.
We don't know the final number on that yet, right? It's going to be lower than what they told us at what we presented at the work session.
Oh, okay.
Councilmember Brenner.
Well, it's going to be lower because they put in there at the meeting to charge for staffing higher than what it turned out their staffing costs were for this past year, so that's
Right.
always one thing. But I have a different question.
Sure.
Okay, why are we contracting with a company in California when we've got a Black Dog Productions here? And did she call you, Suzanne Blaze?
I
told her
believe
to call.
she did, yes.
Why didn't we either put this out for request for proposals or whatever?
It was put out for a request for quotes. It went out in December, and we got one respondent, and that was Monarch Media.
Okay. What if we want to hold this and get a local company who's interested to do it? Can't we do that?
Well, we already went through the evaluation process.
Oh.
I mean, we put out the RFQ, and we got just the one
Oh,
respondent.
RFQ.
Correct.
That's
Yes.
a little different.
And I just want to point out a couple things. One is that this is a little bit of a specialty kind of work. It's somebody who develops online courses, and it's a little different than just somebody who develops websites. And I don't know about the firm you're talking about.
She said she's done online stuff,
but we were looking for somebody that specializes in online educational courses that can set up tests, they can grade it, they can track it, they can report it all back to us. So that's what we put the RFQ out for. It's primarily an educational course that has a website associated with it.
Well, is this a company that has done this before with
Yes.
aquatic invasive?
Not with aquatic invasive species, no, but they've done other boater education programs in Florida, and they specialize mostly in online courses for colleges, but they've done work for, I think, the state of Iowa Liquor Control Board, other education courses.
Councilmember Kremen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you tell me what was the process for the RFQs and who made the decision?
The process for the RFQ, well, we worked with the IT department to put together the qualifications we were looking for, and we submitted it to finance to be advertised just as you would with the other RFQ.
And do you know how it was advertised?
I don't know the exact publications that it went in, but I know that it was in the Bellingham Herald as a standard, and then it goes off to, usually what happens is there's these agencies that pick it up on a listserv. This company is in California, and they didn't pick it up from the Bellingham Herald. They picked it up from an associated public, something that republishes those. And I don't know exactly. I'd have to check with finance to find out exactly where that went.
And this particular firm was the sole respondent?
The sole respondent.
Okay, thank you.
Right, any other questions? Ms. Brenner.
Well, I move that we hold this in committee, and there was another, they didn't respond because they didn't know about it. I'm sorry about that. But it's a local company, and if they could do it just as well, I'd like to keep it local if we can.
So there's a motion to hold. I have a question about that because maybe it's a question for Brad. Just if we've already gone through a RFQ purchasing type process, can we back away from that and do it again?
Yeah, well, that's why would we?
I don't think
Well, of course they can.
Our standard language says that we reserve the right to reject all bids, so I believe we can.
But have we? Yeah.
So we could.
Executive Laos.
If I may, the challenge that we have with this is that if we reject all the bids and go through the process, we aren't going to be up and running at the beginning of the boating season, which is one of the things that we are desirous of getting accomplished. We, as far as I know, talking with staff as it related to this, is we properly put the RFQ out, and everybody has equal opportunity to respond to them. And it is unfortunate that we didn't have a local firm that was aware through publications that this happened. But I believe that the firm that we're contracting with here is capable of doing the job, and I would encourage the council to follow through with this process so that we can get it online and operational at the beginning of the boating season.
Mr. Buchanan.
Yeah, I'd reiterate what was said earlier about the. It is a specialty to do web-based training. It's much more complicated than throwing up a website. There's tracking mechanisms, there's reporting mechanisms that are very much more complex than what an ordinary website has to offer. So I appreciate what he said about it's a very specialized thing. Computer-based training is something that is extremely unique.
Ms. Brenner.
Well, what if we can hold it for 2 weeks and just find out, if that Black Dog Productions is qualified to do it. When you talked to her, did you ask her anything about her?
I didn't get a chance to connect with her. I just heard her message.
Okay.
We have a
can't
motion.
see where it would hurt.
We have a motion to hold it. I'm going to speak against the motion. I think we need to move the process along so we keep missing timelines on this invasive species stuff, and this is one we can make, and it sounds like we went through the right process. Any other discussion on the motion to hold? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That fails 6-1 with Councilmember Brenner in favor. We have the original motion to approve this in front of us. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That passes 6-1 with Councilmember Brenner opposed. We are on to our other items from Finance and Administrative Services. Mr. Crawford.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we considered the ordinance amending the 2014 Whatcom County budget, fourth request in the amount of $775,964. We recommended that with a vote of 3-0, and I would so move.
All right, the motion's in front of us. Any discussion? Ms. Brenner.
Just one thing, and that is there are some parts of this that are very inexact and vague about we'll do it for unanticipated this and that. And it does seem like if we're going to do something that open, and I'm going to vote for it, but I want you guys to think about that a lot of this could be done with small amounts, but they add up cumulatively, and we get stuck not getting any say-so in it because it would go just to the executive. So just to think about.
Okay. Any
Not
other
that
discussion?
I don't trust the executive, but it's not my job to.
All right. Clerk, you want to call the roll?
Rud Browne,
I'm sorry, yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Sam Crawford,
Yes.
Pete Kremen,
Yes.
Ken Mann, Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner.
Yes.
That passes unanimously. Item number 2.
Yes, the next item is authorization for the county exec to enter into an interlocal agreement between Whatcom County and the city of Bellingham, the Port of Bellingham, for the purpose of ensuring consistency in delivery of economic development services in the amount of $405,000, and I believe that's over a 3-year period. And this was recommended 3-0 by the committee, and I would so move.
All right, the motion's in front of us. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. And number 3.
The third item, I'm sorry, I didn't mention it, was held in committee.
Okay, number 3's been held. We're on to items that had no committee assignment, and the first one is a nomination and appointment to fill vacancy on the Water District number 13, Commissioner position number 3. We have 3 applicants. One person has withdrawn their name. And I think the easiest way to do this...
Yeah.
What's that?
How many openings?
There's one opening. There's 3 applicants, so each person will get 1 vote.
Well, one of them.
And the most recent applicants, if we got any today, are in the red packet.
Okay. One of them had all the people in each category. This one just has.
It does. Go to the 4th page. Go back to where it says page 1 of agenda attachment.
Okay, so
This one.
Yes, and that has from there on, it's every
Okay.
person for every category.
Gotcha. Perfect.
So we need nominations.
Okay, nominations, and this is for.
I'll nominate all 3, Amy McGee, Jackie Fowler, and Nanette Dominguez.
Thank you. So all 3 candidates have been nominated. I think the way we'll do it is we'll just start at one end and work down the aisle. Mr. Crawford, who do you vote for?
McGee.
Mr. Kremen?
Fowler.
Ms. Brenner?
Fowler.
I'll vote for Fowler. Mr.
Fowler.
Buchanan.
Fowler.
And Fowler.
All right. Congratulations to Ms. Fowler. She's been elected as the new commissioner for Water and Sewer District number 13. Next one on the list, if I can keep up here, is the annual county council appointments to fill vacancies on various boards and commissions and committees, various applicants. Let's see. Let me find my various voting sheets. The first one is the Board of Equalization. We need a nomination by...
I nominate Wes Vandemark.
Who's our only applicant. We can do this by general consent if you'd like.
So moved.
All right. There's a motion to appoint Mr. Vandemark by general consent. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next is the Open Space Advisory Committee. We have 5 vacancies, and we only have one applicant, Teresa Sigatowicz.
I move Teresa by acclamation.
All right, Ms. Sigatowicz has been moved by acclamation. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously.
We don't have them in the same order you have.
Oh, I've got them in different order, sorry.
Yeah, that's
No,
okay.
he has them in order. All the other ones, there were no applicants.
Yeah, there are no
Oh,
applicants in the
right.
other.
There was no applicant.
Yeah.
You're right.
We could just pick somebody randomly from the audience.
Well, we could.
Planning Commission is next, and we have 3 vacancies from 2 different districts. We're going to do district number 1 first. There are 4 applicants who have applied, Rainey, Hunter, Clisby, and Oliver. And we need nominations from people in District 1 or the open or the at-large seat.
I'll nominate Jeff Rainey.
I'll nominate David Hunter.
So Mr. Rainey and Mr. Hunter have been nominated. Any other nominations? All right.
No.
All right. We're going to close the nominations. And I think we'll start at the other end.
Mr. Chair, I would, for the sake of giving the county council members an opportunity to have more than... I'm going to nominate Nicole Oliver as well.
Okay, so now we have Rainey, Hunter, and Oliver nominated. Any other nominations?
These nominations can only be from
the district?
which would be Kremen,
District
Buchanan, or Brown.
Mr.
right?
Brown.
Correct.
Okay,
But we vote.
all right, let's vote. We all get to vote, and you get 1 vote on this one, and we're going to start at the other end. So, Mr. Brown.
David Hunter.
Mr. Buchanan.
Nicole Oliver.
Nicole Oliver.
I'm going to vote for David Hunter.
Jeff Rainey.
Jeff Rainey.
Jeff Rainey.
So no one got the required 4 votes. So we need to try again.
The top 2, are they all?
Well, there aren't a top 2. There's a top 3.
Oh, man. We never had this.
Is there any discussion about our candidates?
Well, they're all great candidates. They're all
Mann?
qualified. So we can't go wrong with any of them.
Somebody's going to have to change their vote, though.
Well,
Mr. Crawford.
As long as we're discussing candidates, I just want to put in a personal endorsement of Jeff Rainey. I know him personally. He is what you might refer to as salt of the earth, Whatcom County. An incredible guy, incredible businessman. He's been a dairyman, has extensive family out in the East Valley. Definitely represents that whole Highway 9 corridor in a way that many people, I think, personally would struggle. Jeff's an amazing guy. He's everywhere at one time, and I can't say enough good things about him.
Ms. Brenner?
I'm just going to explain how I vote. I always, when somebody served on a commissioner board and they've done a decent job, even when I haven't voted for them to put them on the board, I always vote to let them have the second term. And so I'm sticking with Jeff, but beyond that, he is a farmer, been a farmer forever, and I think we do need the farm community represented, so.
All right. Any movement on this end of the dais?
Vote again.
Okay. I guess we'll start in the middle this time with me, and I'm going to vote for David Hunter.
Who's next?
Me? Yep.
David Hunter.
David Hunter. David Hunter.
Ms. Brenner?
I already said Jeff Rainey.
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 All right, so it looks like David Hunter has been elected 4-3 with council members Weimer, Mann, Browne, and Buchanan supporting him. Next, we have to elect 2 people from District 3, and we have 7 candidates: Erickson, Weber, Haugen, Van Asch, Van Beek, McClendon, and Arnold. So we need nominations from someone in District 3 or the at-large member. Ms. Brenner.
I'm going to nominate all of them.
Okay, so they've all been nominated. That makes it easy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brenner.
Uh-huh.
Well, if I hadn't, you would have.
No, I was glad that was good.
Let's
I think
start
we should always do
with you, Ms. Brenner, this time and go that direction.
And we pick 2 each time,
We
right?
pick 2, yes.
Rod Erickson and Walter Haugen.
Okay, Mr. Kremen.
Erickson and Haugen.
Mr. Crawford.
Erickson and Van Beek.
Mr. Browne.
Natalie McClendon and Haugen.
Mr. Buchanan.
McClendon and Haugen.
Haugen and Weber.
Weber, and I'm voting for Haugen. No, I'm voting for Weber and McClendon. So let's see if I can add up 4 whole names. Mr. Haugen has been elected, and I don't have 4 for anybody else. Let me look at the clerk, who's probably more astute at this than I am.
I didn't hear
You're
4.
supposed to take the next most, I think.
Wouldn't you do a runoff between Erickson and McClendon?
Okay, so we need to do a runoff. We can just do the whole thing again, or we can take the top 2. There's no rules to how we do this. So
So who are the top 2?
the top 2 would be
Erickson and McClendon.
and McClendon. So let's, unless there's an objection, let's do it that way. And we'll start with you this time and go that way. Mr. Mann.
McClendon.
Mr. Buchanan.
McClendon.
Mr. Browne.
Erickson.
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 And I'll vote for McClendon. So we have Ms. McClendon and Mr. Haugen elected. All right, next on our list is a Solid Waste Advisory Committee. And we have 2 vacancies under public interest and 1 vacancy representing business. And it looks like we can do these by general consent if you want.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Brenner has nominated them by general consent, and Amber Jones and Marjorie Ann Leone. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those pass unanimously. Surface Mining Advisory Committee, and we have 3 openings, but only 1 application, and that's from Judy Dudley for the ecologist position.
I move approval by acclamation.
Okay, it's been moved for acclamation. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that one passes unanimously. I think if I'm doing this right, we're on to other items. Number 6, Flood Control Zone District Board of Supervisors appointed boards and commissions and vacancies. We have a number of these to do. The first one up is the Flood Control Zone District for geographic areas. We have 3 vacancies and 5 applicants. So we each get to vote for 3.
Don't we need to vote for?
No.
Well, I guess.
No, he's not doing impacted cities. He's doing geographic areas first.
Well, at some point we got to vote for him.
That's right. It's not on my list, but there's only 1 person for impacted cities. Should we do that one first?
Actually,
This is 2.
Oh, is
but there's
there?
2 positions.
Yeah.
2 positions, 2 people.
2 people.
All right.
Same with the next
Here,
one.
there's
So I nominate both of them.
What's that?
All right. Yeah, the two positions, two mayors been, we need a nomination to do those?
I nominate Bromley and Perry for impacted cities.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Let's go back to the Flood Control Zone District Advisory Committee now.
That's what it was.
Wait a minute, we still got special district applicants too.
What paper are you on?
I don't know what he's looking
Oh,
at.
I've got different sheets.
See, it's special district applicants. There's two, we can choose two, and there's two who have applied.
Okay, I just have them in different order. I have the three vacancies for geographical areas first.
Oh, okay.
And that's where there's three vacancies and there's 5 applicants. Soicher, Smith, Vandehoff, Miracle, and Sigatowitz. And I'll just start here in the middle myself, and I'll vote for, let's see, we each vote for 3. I'm voting for... We need nominations before we get going here.
I'll nominate all.
Okay, all 5 have been nominated. Any other discussion? I'm voting for Soicher, Smith, and Vandehoff. Ms. Brenner.
Soicher, Smith, Vandehoff.
Mr. Kremen.
Soicher, Smith, Vandehoff.
Mr. Crawford.
To make everyone else's vote useless, Soicher, Smith, Vandehoff.
That
All right.
really worked.
Mr. Browne.
Soicher, Smith, Vanderhoff.
Mr. Buchanan.
Soicher, Smith, Vanderhoff.
And Mr. Mann.
Soicher, Smith, Sigatowitz.
All right, so it looks like Mr. Soicher, Mr. Smith, and Mr. Vandehoff have been elected as the geographical representatives. Next on my list is, we have to choose 2 from the special districts, and we only have 2 people who have applied, Harry Williams and Ron Bronsma.
I'll nominate Williams and Bronsma.
We already did that.
No, we didn't.
No, we skipped it.
So they've both been nominated. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. And I think that's it. Now we move on to the Acme Van Zant Flood Control Zones Advisory Committee. We need to choose 3, and there are 4 on our list.
I'll nominate all 4.
Okay, Ian Smith, Teresa Sigatowitz, Holly O'Neill, and Nicole Brown. Yes.
So we just appointed Ian Smith to the Flood Control Zone District. Is it all right for him to also serve on the Subzone Advisory?
They usually do.
Okay, sorry.
Yep. All right. Let's start at your end this time, Mr. Brown.
All of them have been nominated, correct?
Yep.
They've all been nominated. We need to vote for 3.
So Ian Smith, Holly O'Neill, and Nicole Brown.
Mr. Buchanan.
Smith, O'Neill, and Brown.
Smith, O'Neill, Brown.
I'm voting for Smith, O'Neill, Brown.
Hey.
Smith, Sigatowitz, O'Neill.
Smith, O'Neill, Brown.
Smith, Sigatowitz, and O'Neill.
All right, so it looks like Ian Smith, Holly O'Neill, and Nicole Brown have been elected. Congratulations. Next is the Lyndon Everson Flood Control Zone Advisory Committee. We have 3 openings and 2 names that have applied.
I'll nominate both.
Both have been nominated. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously.
We got through
I
this.
think we got through those, and as the audience can hear, we have lots of openings on advisory committees that people haven't even applied to. So if you want to be part of democracy, there's opportunities. Where are we now?
I don't know. Here we're at number 7.
We're on number 7, ordinance amending the Whatcom County Comprehensive Plan and Maps to implement changes related to rural land use planning. Is there any discussion on that
Wait a
item?
second. Wait a second. I wrote some notes. Give me a second. Oh, this
Oh,
was
well,
the,
you need a
I
motion?
move approval.
No, okay, she just did.
Okay, Ms. Brenner has moved approval. Any other discussion? Can we have the roll call?
Sam's got a hand up.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I just wanted to say I support this. It essentially codifies the longstanding policies of the planning department and helps clarify the regulations as Whatcom County already has enforced them for many years. And, in response to some of the growth management appeals that the county's had, the point of doing this, and I appreciate the Planning Commission originally expressing their concern and not having a hearing on the first go round on this, but then taking what has been proposed here and putting it in code. It strengthens the county's case with the Growth Management Hearings Board, and at the same time is essentially not a highly impactful new regulation that would have a negative effect on the folks, many of them that we heard from tonight.
Ms. Brenner?
Well, okay, just want to make sure I got it right.
It's already in Title 20, in 21.
I've got a couple questions that's dawned on me so while we stalled. One is probably for planning staff. I'm wondering if this is going to confuse our efforts for amending the comp plan in the future. As I recall, this is one of the only places that we actually reference our code in the comp plan. So anytime we change the code, we're going to have to change the comp plan too. So if someone wanted to do a comp plan amendment, they're going to have to do both at the same time.
That's correct.
So this could make changing the comp. I mean, how much more difficult is that going to make things?
We've already done it. I mean, it's already, because of the previous case we've had in the Supreme Court case in the Kittitas County case, where the Supreme Court said that measures to protect must be in your comp plan. You can't just say they're in your code. So that's why they're in the comp plan. And the way to do it, we just say, well, our code are the measures, so we'll just readopt them as comp plan policies. It's just a semantic approach, but it pleases the court. So.
Okay. And my second question was, the next item is approving concurrently a bunch of comprehensive plan amendments, and this isn't on the list for concurrent passage. Why is that?
Because this one is directly related to a Growth Management Hearings Board case that we are currently involved in. So those you can make amendments to at any time.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on this? I guess we're ready for the roll call.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Sam Crawford,
Yes.
Pete Kremen,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Rud Browne,
Yes.
That passes unanimously. Next is confirmation of the executive appointments to boards and commissions for 2014. And I don't have a list of those.
Oh, we don't. They're in here.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Mr. Brown.
The list we're voting on, there doesn't appear to be any need for us to choose between.
No.
So you've already selected.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
This is to confirm.
Yep. Thanks.
Mr. Crawford.
Yeah, is it in order for me to nominate all of them as a motion? Or what do we need to do here?
Move confirmation.
Just move to confirm the entire list.
Can we confirm?
Okay, I'll move to confirm the list as presented to the county council.
Okay. Ms. Brenner.
But I'd like to hear it read into the record. These guys applied and got appointed, and I think that's nice that they did it. So.
Well, I don't have it in front of me. So.
Oh, here, you use mine.
Would you like me? No.
All right. We have a whole bunch of people that have been nominated by the county executive. For the Agricultural Advisory Committee, it's Ed Block and Leroy Plagerman. This is where I get to mess up everybody's names. For the Bellingham-Whatcom County Commission Against Domestic Violence, we have nominated Kathy McNaughton and Sherry Stutzman. For the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Andrew Redding and Robert Keller. For the County Appeals Board, it's Bill Hewitt. For the Development Standards Technical Advisory Committee, Patrick Fuller. For the Developmental Disabilities Advisory Board, Lori Shea. For the Housing Authority of Whatcom County, Gary Williams. For the Marine Resource Committee, Lori Caskey Schreiber and Jeremy Brown. And for nominated for appointment also is Rachel Benbrook and Jim Hansen. For the Parks and Recreation Commission, Teresa Sigatowicz. For the Point Roberts Community Advisory Committee, Holger Mickelson. For the Purchase of Development Rights Oversight Committee, John Gillies, Mark Harding, and John Steensma. For the Veterans Advisory Board, Gary Lindsay and Malcolm Kenyon. And for the Whatcom County Library System Board of Trustees, Deborah Lambert. And I missed on the Development Standards Technical Advisory Committee, Carl Reichert. So those are the ones that have been nominated by the executive that we are now moving to confirm. And we have that motion in front of us. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Other items. Now we're going to, these items have been reviewed by the council. These are comp plan amendments. They've already been considered concurrent. They are ready to be considered concurrently so the cumulative effect of the proposals can be evaluated. Each ordinance will be voted on separately, followed by a vote to approve all ordinances as a group. So number one item is an ordinance repealing the 1986 Linden-Nooksack Valley Subarea Plan and amending provisions to the Whatcom County Comprehensive Plan relating to subarea plans.
I'll move approval.
It's been moved for approval. Any discussion? We're ready for the roll call.
Sam Crawford,
Yes.
Pete Kremen,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Rud Browne,
Abstain.
Barry Buchanan,
Abstain.
So that passes 5, no votes against, and 2 abstentions, Mr. Brown and Mr. Buchanan. Next is an ordinance repealing the 1987 Birch Bay Blaine Subarea Plan and amending provisions in the Whatcom County Comprehensive Plan relating to the subarea plans. Mr. Mann has moved approval. Any discussion? We're ready for the roll call.
Pete Kremen,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Rud Browne,
Abstain.
Barry Buchanan,
Abstain.
Sam Crawford,
Yes.
That passes 5, no votes against, and 2 people abstaining, Mr. Brown and Mr. Buchanan. The third one is an ordinance repealing the 1986 Chuckanut Lake Samish Subarea Plan and amending the provisions in the Whatcom County Comprehensive Plan relating to the subarea plans.
I'll move approval.
Mr. Mann has moved approval. Any discussion? We're ready for the roll call.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Rud Browne,
Abstain.
Barry Buchanan,
Abstain.
Sam Crawford,
Yes.
Pete Kremen,
Yes.
That passes 5-2 with 2 members abstaining, Mr. Brown and Mr. Buchanan. And I guess now do we have to vote on all 3 of them? One more?
Yeah.
Capital.
Two.
Or,
2 more.
okay, ordinance adopting amendments to the Point Roberts character plan.
Move approval.
It's been moved for approval. Any discussion? Roll call?
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Rud Browne,
Abstain.
Barry Buchanan,
Abstain.
Sam Crawford,
Yes.
Pete Kremen,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
That passes 5, no votes against, and 2 abstentions, Mr. Brown and Mr. Buchanan. And finally, in an ordinance adopting the comprehensive plan amendments relating to capital facility planning for special purpose districts.
I'll move approval.
Ms. Brenner has moved approval. Any further discussion? We're ready for the roll call.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Rud Browne,
Abstain.
Barry Buchanan,
Abstain.
Sam Crawford,
Yes.
Pete Kremen,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes. That passes 5, no votes against, and 2 abstentions, Mr. Brown and Mr. Buchanan. And now it looks like we need, I don't have a motion in front of me, but a motion just to accept all 5 items for concurrency? Yes. Is there a motion? So moved. All right. Mr. Mann has made that motion. Any discussion? Roll call?
Rud Browne,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Abstain.
Sorry.
Sam Crawford,
Yes.
Pete Kremen,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Dana, I need to correct. I missed the item so mine's abstain.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Browne changes his vote to an abstention. That still passes 5, no votes against, and 2 abstentions, Mr. Browne and Mr. Buchanan. All right.
I'll move the introduction items.
Okay. Introduction items have been moved for approval. Any discussion on any of those? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those pass unanimously. We're making progress. Other business. I think Ms. Brenner has some.
I do. And I'm going to pass these out to everybody and one to the county executive. Hopefully, I got enough. Wait a minute, I got to keep going. How many? There should be 8, so one should go to the exec. Okay, here's some more, you guys. No, that's okay, that was mine, right.
I don't know what is going on here.
Well, one of them should have my...
Oh, yeah.
They're
Okay, now
kind of
I think this is yours, Barbara.
close enough. Yeah. Okay, then I have an extra one. Okay.
That's for staff.
But we should... I don't think we got them. You said 8, right? Oh, 8 and mine. So yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Okay. I just found out from Planning and Development staff person who's been working on this, Nick Smith, that there was a notice. We never got a copy of it, but it talked about having the opportunity to decide whether location for a grow operation is appropriate or not. So the state didn't bother to send that to us. But there's also the letter from Sheriff Elfo, and it's a very good letter. And last but definitely not least, there's a letter from the Liquor Board. She's the Customer Service Manager, Licensing and Regulation Division, the Washington State Liquor Board. And she said, let's see, we have no idea when the licenses will be issued at this point. I can tell you, though, we are nowhere near being close to issuing any licenses, especially the producers. We only allotted a certain amount of square footage of plant canopy and will not be issuing the first license until we decide how much each producer will be allowed to grow in order to keep it at the amount allowed to produce. We are talking months away still. Again, you are more than welcome to send your protests to us as this goes forward, but in all honesty, your concerns might hold more weight if you can get your local jurisdiction to object. Thank you again, and her name is Beth Lehman. So what I did was I did a cover letter because I think we definitely should object. One of the problems we had was when we got a presentation, I think it was last spring or summer, from the Whatcom County prosecuting attorney, Dave McEachran. He said it's got to be treated just like regular agriculture. And we were under the impression, everybody was, that there was no limiting we could do. Then all of a sudden, the Attorney General, a few weeks ago, I want to say a couple weeks ago maybe, comes out with an opinion that we absolutely can limit it, which we didn't know. So here's the state allowing applications to go in before they had the Attorney General's opinion. I mean, it's like, they did it backwards. I would say it a little different than that. And I feel like the state has put us in an untenable position because there are locations, and I am not opposed to pot growing at all. In fact, that's in here. I'm going to read this to you. I just feel like they owe us to make it right. And here's what I wrote. Honorable members of the Washington State Liquor Control Board, Whatcom County requests the board halt approval of any applications for marijuana grow operations in Whatcom County for the following reasons. 1, until very recently, Whatcom County did not know we could put any limitations on these types of operations except treat them like any agricultural operation. Just a few weeks ago, the State Attorney General informed us we could create limitations. 2, our Sheriff, Bill Elfo, already sent you a letter letting you know at least one application is in an area that cannot be adequately protected by the Sheriff's Department. See attached letter. 3, only recently were we made aware of a notice form for government bodies to weigh in on whether we support or oppose individual locations. See attached form. 4, on Tuesday, January 21, 2014, Elizabeth Lehman, Customer Service Manager, Licensing and Development Division for the Washington State Liquor Control Board, wrote a Whatcom County resident, and this is just little pieces out of what I'd read before. Quote, we have no idea when the licenses will be issued at this point. We are talking months away still. Again, you are more than welcome to send your protest to us, but in all honesty, your concerns might hold more weight if you can get your local jurisdiction to object. See attachment. Whatcom County is objecting with this letter. We believe the state has much responsibility for the potential problems we face by allowing submission of applications before counties knew we can set limits that will protect public health and safety. That should say in safety. This is not an objection to the legalization of grow operations. It is a plea to the state from where this all originated to protect our county from the unintended consequences of opening up the application process before letting counties know that how we can cope with certain risks. Please protect state residents by halting the acceptance of all applications until local governments have a reasonable amount of time to put reasonable limitations on marijuana grow operations. Whatcom County Council, and I'm hoping the Whatcom County Executive, and anybody can add changes or whatever they want to it. But I just think time is critical here, and I really personally didn't even know till recently that we could do any limitations.
Okay. Mr. Kremen and then Mr. Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank Councilmember Brenner for bringing this up. If she wasn't going to do this, I was. Maybe not in the same manner, but not only did the State Attorney General say that we could create limitations, the State Attorney General actually said that we could outright ban the processing, sale, or distribution of marijuana. Now, I'm not advocating that, but I feel very strongly that, especially for the production and processing of marijuana, it needs a real close scrutiny as to where, how much, and certain other parameters and regulations, so that there's some semblance of approval or not approving certain applications. We need some sort of structure or guidelines, and it's going to take some time to do that. And I think that it would be time well spent by this council with the help of staff and maybe working with with the Liquor Control Board and whoever else, so that we do have a basis for approving applications or not approving applications. Because right now, there are absolutely no guidelines or none that are meaningful in any way. And I think that the public needs to be able to have some sort of understanding and set guidelines for how this body approves or disapproves any growing or processing operations, as well as retail. So that's my 2 cents worth. So I am going to support the letter. We may want to rework it, but I think the gist and the purpose of this letter is warranted, and I'm going to support it.
Mr. Crawford.
I generally agree with my colleague, Councilmember Kremen. However, I also agree with the parts that this is not the letter to send. It needs to be completely rewritten as far as I'm concerned. One aspect of it that I think we ought to pursue is deal with the unincorporated parts of the county. I know some of the cities in the county have already dealt with this issue, and this seems to cover the entire county. So Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's as timely as Councilmember Brenner says, because she even quotes them saying we are talking months away. So I think if someone wanted to spend a little time and work on this a little bit, we could come back in 2 weeks and get a letter going that sounds a little more like, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to put this, a little less like, a little more, we should rewrite the letter, and we should do it. I also have a concern, we've got one area in particular, and it was mentioned tonight that there's probably other areas, and so Councilmember Brenner, in all seriousness, I respect what you're trying to do here. I don't know if it's biting off more than we can chew. I think maybe if we put in a paragraph that said, we're letting the cities of Whatcom County deal with this on their own, and they can speak for themselves, but we're going to talk about the unincorporated parts of the county, because I think that, first off, I think if we said none in Whatcom County, the Liquor Control Board's going, read the state law. We've already assigned there's going to be this many. But if we talk about the unincorporated county, that would make more sense. And I particularly have a ton of sympathy for the Clearbrook folks. And there's a big part of me that wishes we could specifically address that one too, and that's not addressed in this letter. So there's my 2 cents worth.
Can I just respond to
we're going to let everybody else have a chance before we come back to you. Mr. Mann and then Mr. Browne.
So I am very annoyed to learn that the information that we were given originally is apparently inaccurate, because I remember when I thought Bellingham sort of went crazy and had this emergency moratorium and then reversed themselves and everything, and we looked around here and said, what's going to be our policy? What are we going to do to avoid that craziness? And we were pretty much told what our limitations were. So I don't know whose fault. I'll go ahead and blame the state. That way no one in the room gets mad at me. But I really, really do not appreciate them changing signals like that. We're trying to be predictable and consistent and clear, and this is, I just want to make that clear. I'm very annoyed by this situation. Specifically, I need more understanding from the sheriff or other people who may be experts what exactly it is about a marijuana grow-op that is proven to be, harmful. I completely understand the criminal element, the cash element, the unsavory element that existed when it was illegal. But if it's legal now and there's processes in place and inspections and in guidelines, I don't know exactly what. I don't think there's going to be a bunch of people hanging out front smoking weed and harassing people. But so I need more understanding what the data says about what proximity to a grow-op means when it's legal. And I don't even know if we have that information, because this is very new. So I agree with the letter. I think we absolutely should tell the state to get their act together, and they should not be accepting applications until they finalize their rulemaking. So I think in general, I support your intention here, Ms. Brenner, and I think the letter's fine. We don't have to rewrite it as far as I'm concerned, but I think the main message I would want to send is, state, figure out what you're doing, get your head straight, and then we can go ahead and make our rules so that people in Whatcom County know what the rules are and can go forward.
Mr. Browne.
So I think this has to be split into two parts. One is the specific issue with the Delta 9 property, which is the Delta 9 property is the one that's attracted Clearbrook has attracted all the complaints and generated the letter from Sheriff Elfo. And I think that's a specific issue that should be addressed with the Liquor Control Board. And then the second issue would be an overall comment to them about what we want to do going forward. But I think we have to split those in half to begin with.
Okay. Mr. Buchanan?
Well, I don't know if I agree with that or not. I think what you need is a set of parameters that apply to everybody that you can equally apply to any applicant rather than trying to do what is kind of the equivalent of a spot zone. I think you really have to look at the big picture. You have to come up with, what kind of parameters do we want on where these operations can go, and then apply that fairly.
Okay, and I'll just chime in before we go back to Ms. Brenner, who can correct us all then.
Yes, I will. Not all of you. Everybody agreed with me. It's fine.
And I agree with you, too, and I really appreciate the people that have brought this forward because it was an issue we talked about a long time ago and we're told we couldn't weigh in on, and now we're told we can, and it's obvious that we ought to. But I also agree with Mr. Crawford that I don't think this is the letter and this blanket nowhere in Whatcom County that kind of overarches over the cities probably isn't the way to go. So my preference would be to hold this for a couple of weeks till we can figure out in one of the committees what we're doing, because it sounds like they're not about to hand these permits out. I also think that I agree with, I think Mr. Browne is, and I don't have much understanding of this, so I think we need a whole lot more understanding, is that as these applications come forward, the county sent them and we can object to any ones we want. And it sounds like there's enough reason to object to the Delta 9 one at this point. The sheriff already has done that. I don't know if the docket is still open to do that, but we certainly could send a letter about that one or ask them to put it on hold until we think about zoning. I think we need to have a discussion with the executive, too, because this is going to be a time drain on the planning staff, who has a few other things going on right now, too. So we need to understand that better. So instead of sending off a letter tomorrow morning about things we don't understand very well, I'd rather hold it and get a better understanding. Ms. Brenner.
Well, actually, I think I do understand it pretty well. I've talked to Nick over months, and this thing has just kind of changed. I get the feeling we should do it sooner rather than take any extra time, because these applications are already in. I don't know if they're called vested or not, but I think the state has the right to come down as hard as they want or whatever, and they put us in this position. And it is the state. Dave told us the only information he had at that time. The other thing is, we have already received in Whatcom County 300 applications, and we're getting 1 to 2 a day. That tells me, we really better make sure. The other thing, 6 people have contacted me. One was just about hemp, but the others were all about marijuana, and every one of those people wanted to do it in industrial or light industrial areas. They didn't want to do it in ag land. And we don't have the rules in place to allow it in industrial or light industrial. Those are the kind of amendments we need to make. We could even make, emergency amendments if we have to at least slow this thing down. And whoever said the thing about wondering about, since it's legal, the proximity, why people are worried, marijuana, legal or not, is a valuable product. Out in the middle of nowhere, it's definitely going to be more attractive to a criminal element, because they could go break in and steal it and be off before anybody knows, because the county sheriff cannot adequately patrol it. So it seems to me that, and I got to tell you, some of the people who came to me to talk about applying, they all stood out as nice people, but one of them, dressed in a suit and tie, he's an Iraqi war vet, and he totally wanted to do it, and they all did, but he was really emphatic, and I'm going, why can't we do it there? And Nick told me we don't allow that. What in county code, if we don't say something specifically is allowed, it isn't allowed, and that's a problem with our county code. I don't like that, but that's the way it is. So I don't think we should get too specific, because I think that we're getting inundated with this. I don't mind sending a letter, separate letter specific, but I think we need to deal with the issue. And it never, until Cheetah called me, it never even occurred to me the problems that could happen in an isolated little community in an ag area. It just, I thought it was weird that we really didn't get to weigh in, and it was just what it is, but I never thought of it as, it never had a picture. It wasn't real visible to me until she contacted me. And it's very visible to me now. I want it to work. And I think if we get the unintended consequences of putting it in the wrong places, the whole thing's going to go down. And I don't want that to happen either. So I just want to make sure. Plus, it's a very big public safety issue, because I can't imagine if you've got something that's in an isolated area and it's really valuable, that you're not going to be more prone to crime.
Can I just address that?
I think Mr. Kremen was next.
Sorry. And I don't
You
care
know
if
what?
it's-
If it's germane to what Councilmember Brenner was talking about, go ahead and I'll defer to you for the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Kremen. Yeah, I wasn't trying to minimize the concerns. I'm just trying to say I need to understand them better because I think we're in uncharted territory, and I realize it's a valuable substance, but we have other valuable things that are legal in remote areas, whether it's a bank full of money or a pharmacy full of drugs or a liquor store. I mean, I
Those
don't.
aren't legal.
Prescription drugs are legal.
Oh.
A pharmacy, whatever. I'm just saying.
Sorry.
You're
right.
People are making a lot of assumptions about the criminal element or the danger of public safety factor that I don't have enough data to know yet if it's true. That's all I'm saying.
You've got data.
Okay.
Maybe the sheriff can come to that up too.
Mr. Kremen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do want to bring up an issue that is not to be taken lightly. And that is, during my meetings with the Legislative Steering Committee in Olympia, we have come to find that the proposal from the state is that the state is going to take all of the revenue generated by the sale and distribution of marijuana, with the exception of the sales tax, which means that Whatcom County would wind up more than likely getting 0.15% of the sale of the product. And
How much does the state get?
That's my point exactly. The state is going to make, well, if Colorado is any example, the state stands to make millions and millions of dollars. And what I'm concerned about is it's the local community. It is Whatcom County that is going to bear the lion's share of the responsibility and obligation to enforce and regulate and spend time even coming up with regulations, which I do think we need. I think we have to have some structured guidelines so that when we do make decisions, there's some law behind it. There's some legal ground to stand on so that we don't get sued because a certain applicant feels that they should have been granted a permit and didn't. And maybe our legal counsel will concur with me on that. But from the administrative perspective that I have for, at 16 years as the county executive, I know that the county is in much better shape and is much more protected when we have rules and guidelines when we base our decisions of whether or not to permit whether it's a growing operation or a processing operation or what have you. But again, the revenue that everyone thought was going to be shared, and by the way, there is an effort, and it's a collective effort with the Association of Counties and the Association of Cities to a request of the legislature that the local governments need to at the very least be made whole financially, because we're the ones going to be doing the regulation and the enforcement. And I'm sure that our sheriff will agree with that. In fact, I think the sheriffs and police chiefs are also on board. So this is a unified effort that we're trying to mount in Olympia to make sure that the state doesn't wind up with all the money. And by the way, the state is claiming the reason they need all the money is because they need to give it to education. So I guess I'll leave. I know I spoke at length, but I think it's information that you all need to be aware of as we embark on trying to come up with some sort of structure to deal with the production and the processing and sale of marijuana in our community.
Okay, I think Executive Laus has something to add.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate all of the comments. I too believe that a letter to the Liquor Control Board would be appropriate in this instance. On behalf of the people of Clearbrook, but also for Whatcom County, petitioning the Liquor Control Board to hold off on approval of applications at this particular time. Because I believe that it would be in our best interest in the very short term is to put together potential for an ordinance that would account for security issues related to the growing, processing, sale of marijuana, which would include sight lines, setbacks from residential areas, police response times. 40 years ago, I seem to understand that marijuana burns, so that we have fire flow issues as it relates to the drying of the product and so on and so forth. And if we put together a good set of regulations that would account for a lot of the concerns that we heard that would be applicable throughout the county, I think that would be appropriate for us to do. And former Executive Kremen, Councilmember Kremen said it correctly. We do have an obligation to treat these applicants equitably, and being put into a position that on the long term that we pick and choose the ones we may like or dislike based on citizens coming in is going to put us in a position of liability that I don't like you, so I don't want you to do this, or I don't like that location, so you can't do this. So that's why I'm saying on a long-term basis, we need to take care of this. We did get direction from the prosecuting attorney or advice from the prosecuting attorney on how to handle it, and the sheriff has a letter that he's attached to all of the applications. Planning and Development Services is just looking at it from a technical standpoint of whether it meets the zoning for a grow operation or for a sale distribution operation. But in truth, I think we need to do more. And because of the controlled substance, I think the sheriff is here. He may be willing tonight to tell you that these grow operations that we have right now is we do have law enforcement issues with it, and we have had some instances of armed robbery in them, and that is a concern. So I would suggest that the council over the next couple weeks develop a letter and send that off. I'd be supportive of that. More importantly, I would like to receive direction, if you're so willing, to work on first on an interim basis and then on a long-term basis of putting some solid regulations surrounding this that would allow for the grow, process, and sale of it, but in a much more controlled environment than what the state may or may not require through their application process. Thank you.
Ms. Brenner.
Yeah, and I want to correct another thing that Mr. Crawford said that's not correct. I said counties, and I used the word counties. We do not have anything to do with what happens development-wise within the cities. We have our own planning department, our own public works department that issues permits for the unincorporated area. I didn't think I needed to say unincorporated Whatcom County because we don't. It's the city that makes their decisions about development inside the city, not us. So that's why I said counties.
Mr. Browne.
So one of the curious things about this letter is it's dated December 26th. It gives us 20 days to respond, and that would be the day before we'd come back from recess. So
we didn't know about it.
No. But the rules, if you read the letter is dated December 26th. Right. They give us 20 days.
It's not to us. It was to somebody else. I got it secondhand.
No, I know that, but the Liquor Control Board's rules say you have 20 days to object. Right. The 20 days was during the period of time that we were at recess. So and then they say if you need more than that, you can apply for another 20 days.
But you have to do it before.
And we've only got 6 days left. So
it is time critical.
So that's why I say I think it's important that we split these between this particular application because of the time sensitivity and the fact that we have a formal document asking us if we want to object to this one versus the rest of the zoning and policy issues.
Mr. Crawford.
Is there a motion?
I don't believe so.
I would like to make a motion if we could.
I think I have the floor.
Right, sorry.
I'll move that the Whatcom County Council Chair and Councilmember Brenner, if she'd like to, work with the county executive to compose a letter to bring back regarding the issues that have been brought up tonight. And there's been several of them, so I hope you get to refer to the minutes a little bit. I thought the latest thing that Councilmember Kremen said was particularly important about revenue, and we should probably include a paragraph about that. But in the meantime, compose a letter and specifically state unincorporated Whatcom County to put those applications on hold. The second part of the same motion is to immediately compose a letter, and I love the idea of proposing letters that I don't have the time to write, but if somebody needs to write a letter about Clearbook in particular and get that in as hopefully in the next day or two. So my motion is two-part. One is to work with the county executive to compose a letter to bring back to the council for approval in 2 weeks regarding marijuana applications in all of unincorporated Whatcom County, whether it's growing, retailing, whatever, and incorporate many of the comments that have been made tonight. And then secondly, to compose a letter to the State Liquor Control Board about the Clearbook application and get that out within the next day or two. And if there are folks that are able to work on that, I apologize. I have to go back to my other job first thing in the morning, and my time for the next few days is going to be tied up. Otherwise, I'd be glad to help.
Okay, we have a motion now.
I have a suggestion.
Ms. Brenner?
On the motion, what if on number 2, we could make this very specific. I mean, if you don't like my style of writing, that's another thing. But we could make this very specific by saying our sheriff also already sent you a letter letting you know this particular area cannot be adequately protected by the sheriff's department, and make it specific to that area.
Yeah, that's.
But do you want to get? Is there anything else? And I'll put on.
I assume you're talking about my letter number 2, which is the one that will go out in the next day or two regarding Clearbrook, and that's fine. However you guys want to work on that. I'm certainly thinking the time is now that it needs to be responded to, especially after Mr. Browne pointed out it appears there's a deadline on this thing, and we're up against that.
Any other discussions on the motion, Mr. Browne?
I just said I think the proper response includes filling this form out and sending it back. So.
Absolutely.
Mr. Mann.
The more I think about it, the more irritated I am that the state misled us, essentially.
This wasn't the state's idea.
This was
brought forward by the voters.
No. But we had our prosecuting attorney right here explain to us what the rules were going to be, and then they changed it on us. Okay, either way, I'm irritated. So here's what I want to say. I like your letter, Ms. Brenner, because it's very, but it's very clear that, the state, the second half of your letter says it's not an objection to the legalization, it's a plea to protect our county from the unintended consequences before we know how we can cope with certain risks, or frankly, before we even know exactly what those risks are going to be. And please protect the state residents by halting the acceptance of all applications until all local governments have a reasonable amount of time to put limitations on them, or not. Just to put some rules in place, like the fact that we didn't know we could do this is, have I said that I'm annoyed and irritated and upset by that? Because I really am. So I think, I like your letter. I think it says what I would want to say is, if we're allowed to do something, we need to educate ourselves. We need to have a presentation about what the risks are, and then we need to put into place some reasonable criteria for citing.
Mr. Kremen.
With all due respect to Councilmember Brenner, I think that the letter needs to be a little more specific to Whatcom County. I think it's probably inappropriate to be asking on behalf of all of the state residents, because that's beyond our purview and authority and our jurisdiction. And I do think the letter needs some fine-tuning or honing or just a little more refinement. But again, the spirit of the letter, the intent of the letter is something that I wholeheartedly support. I also want to make a point that in spite of what Councilmember Brenner said about that the cities, they regulate their own and we don't have anything to do with the cities, I want to bring to your attention, and it goes back to the actual costs that are going to be incurred by the county especially, is the fact that most of the crime that's going to occur, whether it's in the unincorporated area or in the municipalities where most of the retail outlets are going to be felonies. And felony crime is unfortunately and unfairly, in my opinion, all of the costs associated with the felony crimes, whether through the entire system, the entire criminal justice system is borne by the county. And it is going to be, in my opinion, potentially extremely expensive and a major hit to our already beleaguered criminal justice funding system. And I just can't be emphatic enough that that it is going to take a significant amount of revenue to implement and enforce this initiative 502. And I think, to me, it's a glaring example of I'm all for the people speaking, but I think governing by initiative all too often creates more problems than it solves.
All right, so we have a motion in front of us, so I'd like us to concentrate on the motion. And the motion was to send two letters. One is a letter as soon as possible of objection to the Delta 9 proposal, and I'm assuming that includes filling out the form that goes along with that. And one of the questions I have about that to the executive or to the sheriff is, has somebody already done this form?
The form has been filled out. It's the letter that I sign for all of the applications is attached to that, and the letter of specific objection that the sheriff wrote was attached to it, and it has been submitted to the Washington State Liquor Control Board at this time. So the letter that you would be developing is we would send as a separate attachment or a separate letter to attach to the to our response.
Okay. And the second part of the motion was to produce a longer letter that talks about all of our general concerns about marijuana that we would bring back in 2 weeks or so once we have time to work on it and review it again to send to the Liquor Control.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I would suggest that you CC our legislative representatives both in the 40th and the 42nd District along with sending the letter to the Liquor Control Board.
Right. So I'm assuming the longer letter that we'll do in a couple weeks will incorporate a whole lot of your points. Ms. Brenner.
So would you guys trust me if I'm working with Chairman Weimer, if we come up with something in the next day or so to get it out? To me, it's about the issue of timing, getting it done, especially for this specific application. And I want to get it, I think it's really important.
Yes, so, that's part of the motion. Yes.
Okay, but what I'm
asking
is,
letter.
So you trust?
I trust you emphatically.
Yes, they want us to send a letter as soon as possible about the Clear Book.
Yes, so you and I can work on it.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're ready to vote.
Yes.
As much as I disagree with you, Councilmember Brenner, I believe your heart is in the right place, and I'm supporting you in a very backhanded way.
Any other discussion on? Any other discussion on the motion?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Ms. Brenner and I will get cracking on it. All right. Other business. Mr. Buchanan. Oh.
Would the council wish to provide any direction to the administration on putting a plan together to develop a strategy to implement
that was the motion I was going to make,
sideboards?
Mr. Executive. I was just about to make that motion.
Thank you.
Let's stick with this subject. So, Mr. Kremen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the council ask the executive to work with the appropriate staff. I'm suggesting the health department, the sheriff's office, and the planning department about and our legal counsel about coming up with some sort of parameters, guidelines, and structure for which we can mold a set of rules and regulations so that we can implement Initiative 502 in a judicious and fair and protected manner.
All right. So we have that motion in front of us. Ms. Brenner.
Am I getting too specific to ask that what they work on would be to consider industrial and light industrial zoning? Or is that being too specific? Too specific?
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll consider that. Any other discussion? Mr. Browne.
One of the other issues that's come up on this sort of as a secondary issue to this topic is the issue of industrial hemp, and I'm not sure what the current regulations.
It's kind of a different animal.
Yeah, I don't know, but it might be an opportune time to at least think through that issue at the same time, because it's probably not a lot of extra work.
Ms. Brenner?
Well, I was contacted by one person, a woman, and she probably contacted planning, and it was very, she's talking about making clothes and things like that, and I don't know enough about if hemp is a problem. I know pot, but I don't know hemp. I mean, even though they're the same plant, I'm not sure what the differences are, so maybe we need a lesson, too.
I just know the issue is going to come up, and we're going to end up devoting time on it. So.
All right, so we have the motion in front of us. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Now, Mr. Buchanan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We had several folks testify today at our open comment section about the Cultural Access Fund. And I emailed each of you a draft letter as well as a little couple of information sheets about what the program is about. The state legislature is now considering whether or not this would be enabling legislation to enable this to be able to counties to be able to have this on the ballot for citizens to support and create a publicly funded cultural access program. So I would like to move that we, under the pen of our chair, send a letter from the council supporting this. That's all it does is the legislation would make it the opportunity available for counties to be able to have an initiative put on the ballot for, not an initiative, but a tax levy put on the ballot to publicly fund this.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Crawford.
Well, I was reading about this. That's what this is about. I thought it was that it gave county councils the authorization to levy the tax. No?
No, it's read the fourth paragraph. Cultural Access Washington legislation will provide citizens in counties like Whatcom the opportunity to create.
No, I know all that. What about how it gets passed?
It gets passed by the voters.
Okay, it doesn't say that in this letter, does it?
As long as it goes to the voters, I'm fine.
Do you? Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Crawford.
Yeah, I'll speak against this. This is simply another tax that I think the folks in the arts community, if they can get the legislature to pass this, and then as a county we want to look at it. What I read was this is for counties, but if you want to bring this forward in 2 weeks and show us where it's to be put on the ballot, I'd be interested in that. I did some research because the folks apparently you've been talking to started sending us emails about this before I really knew what it was about, and I thought it was to enable the legislative body of the county to put on the tax. You're sure about that, Councilmember Mann? You're shaking your head?
That's been my understanding all along.
Is what?
That it's enabling legislation.
It requires a vote of the people.
But it doesn't provide.
Yeah. But Mr. Frank, I haven't read the bill. That's just how it's
Let's
explained
read the
to me.
bill.
Mr. Kremen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to confess that this issue, although I'm not diminishing its importance or significance, but has not come up before the Legislative Steering Committee. But I'm just wondering, I would like to see the bill. I don't know if there's a companion bill in the House and the Senate, or if there's one in each, or but I'd like to do a little research on it. I would reserve taking a position on this until I find out if it's councilmatic or gives us the option to go out to the people, or are we only able to adopt it as a body. I'd like a little more information. If it happens to be something that can be voted on by the public, it's something that I could support. But if it just enables counties to either to pass it arbitrarily without a vote of the people, I would be somewhat reluctant, especially given the fact that we need to pass a jail tax and an EMS tax and a lot of other critical issues out there that need additional funding as well. So I'd like a little more information before I take a position on this.
Well, I tried to raise my hand, but then I'd have to call on myself. But I support the idea and the concept. But I also agree that I support it if all we're doing is encouraging a vote of the people to pass this. And maybe the one friendly amendment would be to send the letter only once the council chair has verified that this requires a vote of the people and shares that information with the council.
Yeah, I would accept that.
Okay, so now we have a tweaked motion in front of us to send this letter, but only once that I verify that it does require a vote of the people, and I'll share that language with the councils. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Passes 6-1 with Councilmember Crawford opposed. Any other business from anybody?
Yeah.
Ms. Brenner.
We had a discussion today in Public Works Committee about the ferry committee, and several of us have offered to go to their meetings, and hopefully the things are going to get it worked out with the administration, with Public Works being there. So we're making progress.
Okay.